What happens when an artist loses their nerve? After Ace in the Hole bombed at the box office, giving Billy Wilder his first taste of failure in Hollywood, he found himself in an unusual position. For the first time since he started directing movies, he wasn't on top. And Wilder was very sensitive to how Hollywood treated its fallen stars. After all, this is the guy who made Sunset Boulevard.
To make matters worse, Wilder had recently parted ways with Charles Brackett, the man he'd co-written over a dozen movies with. Wilder wanted to go it alone, and he'd gotten his wish. Now, he was very much alone.
But after he bounced back from Ace in the Hole's failure with a hit in Stalag 17, Wilder was still artistically playing it safe. Which brings us to his 1954 movie, Sabrina. I'm Michael Moreci, and in today's episode, we're going to explore the history of this classic film, its behind-the-scenes drama, and why Wilder chose a project that, to be frank, lacked his usual bravado.
Sabrina is a classic, and it's pretty great, but it lacks Wilder's usual bite, and for good reason. I'm Keir Graff, and we're going to discuss all of this and more in this installment of the Filmographers podcast.
Keir, kick us off with your one-sentence summary of Sabrina.
A chauffeur's daughter, in unrequited love with the playboy son of her employer's family, finally catches his eye after she returns from a Paris cooking school with a new wardrobe and a new attitude. But when the sensible older brother tries to keep them apart for business reasons, he realizes he's a romantic too.
This lush romantic comedy from Academy Award-winning director Billy Wilder, featuring Oscar winners Humphrey Bogart and William Holden, captivated audiences and critics alike and secured the legend of its Cinderella-like star, Audrey Hepburn.
Sabrina came along, and we here at Paramount, we were so excited. My gosh, we had Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn, William Holden, and Billy Wilder in the same package. And I've never seen Audrey Hepburn more excited than when she read the script on Sabrina, because she just knew that this picture was so important in her career.
Sabrina was only Hepburn's second Hollywood film, but after her stunning debut in Roman Holiday, Paramount was eager to capitalize on her skyrocketing popularity.
Listeners, before we dive back in, please leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. We'd love to know if we're doing a good job, but more importantly, you'll help us attract new listeners. I know we've delivered long-winded song and dances in the past about reviews, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Ratings and reviews are very important to us, and we'd be grateful if you left us one.
Like our video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe on your podcatcher of choice. All these things are easy to do and help us tremendously.
Yes, be like Flavio, who left us a review actually on Podcast Addict, which you can leave reviews there too. Flavio says, I regularly listen to new film podcasts, but stumbled upon this one by chance, and it immediately became one of my favorites. The two hosts have a professional and engaging way of speaking, sharing all kinds of information about cinema with true expertise. Keep up the excellent work, and I'll keep listening. Thank you, Flavio. I hope you are still listening. This is 6 months ago, so hopefully you're hearing this now.
Nice.
And we have one also, a new one from our friends across the pond in the UK Apple Podcast. Jack Dayart says, top marks, an entertaining and thoroughly informative podcast. 2 thumbs way up.
Thank you, Flavio and Jack. And, listeners, if you haven't written one, follow in their footsteps.
Yes, I encourage it highly. So, Keir, I think it's safe to say that Sabrina is Wilder's most Hollywood film to date. I mean, the cast alone, Bogart, Holden, and Hepburn, come on. Although we should point out that this was only Hepburn's second starring role following Roman Holiday. She wasn't the star then that we know now.
She did win a Best Actress Oscar for Roman Holiday, although that happened while Sabrina was filming. In fact, she and Holden both won Oscars, Holden for Stalag 17, at the same Academy Awards, and both were their only Oscar wins.
That's interesting. You would think that Hepburn would have won more, though she is. She's one of the few EGOT winners, having won an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony.
She also wins the prize of life or something because she was just a great human being.
Yes, she was, and we'll get more into that soon. For now, we've got Wilder going full Hollywood, full romantic, and full A-list talent. He'd worked with great stars before, but not so many in one film.
Holden had been in Sunset Boulevard, but he was not yet an A-lister. At that point, he never was until Wilder turned his career around. And it had Swanson too, of course, but she was at that time a has-been. A Foreign Affair featured a fading Jean Arthur and a fading Marlene Dietrich. Ace in the Hole had Kirk Douglas, who was a rising star, but that was about it for star power. Wilder always wanted a star. He knew how necessary they were to take the film to the next level, but he never loaded up on them quite like he did in Sabrina.
Wilder was making a statement. In his book On Sunset Boulevard, Ed Sykoff notes that, quote, Billy Wilder was a big shot, and he planned to stay that way, end quote. We've spoken a lot in the past 2 episodes about how Wilder was feeling very uncertain during this period of his career. Ace had bombed, he'd broken up with Brackett, but there was even more to the story than that. When Wilder looked around at his contemporaries, writers and directors he'd formed his career either with or alongside, he saw a lot of fading careers. Both Robert and Kurt Siodmak were on a downward trajectory. Kurt was writing Tarzan and other B- pictures, as was Wilder's own brother, Willie, who was directing movies like Phantoms from Space and Killer from Space. There's a theme there.
The old Space trilogy.
Yes.
What was the third one?
Space from Space. Edgar Ulmer had basically been kicked out of the industry at this point, and worst of all, Lubitsch was dead. Wilder, in order to survive and remain the top dog, had to be better, tougher, and most of all, smarter than everybody else around him.
And he was smart enough to recognize a once-in-a-lifetime star when he saw one. Despite having just one major role under her belt, Hepburn was, as Sykoff says, a meteor setting the screen and Hollywood ablaze.
And Wilder respected Hepburn. As everyone surely knows, Hepburn was a wonderful humanitarian, but she also, as a teenager, helped aid in the Dutch resistance against the Nazis in World War II. She acted as a courier, transporting secret messages in her shoes. Fascinating.
Yeah.
If there's anything Wilder loved, it was people who hated Nazis.
She was also a dancer and staged underground concerts, giving the proceeds to the resistance.
Talk about having it all.
She had it all.
Spread it around a little, God.
And she was tough. There's even a story about how she escaped from a young Nazi soldier when he put down his gun to light a cigarette, then hid for almost a month in a rat-infested cellar. She may have looked like a doe-eyed nymph, but she had a spine of steel. Now, there are conflicting accounts as to how Sabrina got off the ground. According to one version, Hepburn had read the script for Samuel Taylor's play, Sabrina Fair, and convinced Paramount to buy it for her. But Wilder claimed he told Paramount to buy it so he could get Hepburn to star in it. Knowing Wilder's penchant for bullshit and self-mythologizing, I want to give this one to Hepburn. But it's absolutely true, Wilder was smitten with Hepburn, her beauty, her class, and her intelligence. He once said of her, it's the ultimate Billy Wilder compliment, she looks as if she could spell schizophrenia.
I can't spell skin, not offhand. I couldn't, there's no way.
I won the school spelling bee when I was in 6th grade, so I back myself. Maybe me and Hepburn were really meant to be together.
Maybe you guys got your schizophrenia spelling down. But unfortunately, one newly born star wasn't enough. Wilder needed big names for the Larrabee brothers, so he called his good friend William Holden and the one and only Cary Grant. For the upteenth time, Wilder called on Grant, and Grant once again agreed. And then he pulled out. Again. So Wilder went down the list of A-list actors and landed somehow on Humphrey Bogart. It's an odd choice. There's something about this pairing that doesn't work, but if you're Wilder and you want big-time talent, Bogart in 1954 is your guy. I mean, do we even have to list his classics here?
I'm going to say no. No, we do not. If you don't know Bogart's career, I don't know why you're listening to a film podcast, so we'll just move along. From late 1930s up to Sabrina, Bogart was cranking out one classic after another. I mean, he is arguably the quintessential male Hollywood star.
Yes, he was. And he got paid for it, taking home a whopping $200,000 for Sabrina and the right to approve Wilder's script, something that, given Wilder's desire to have his scripts read word for word, must have gnawed at his soul. But That's the price you pay to get top talent. In comparison, Holden took home $80,000 and Hepburn received just $35,000.
Though, to be fair, Wilder got the last laugh. His fee for writing, producing, and directing totaled $250,000. So take that, Bogey.
Not yet, because Wilder and Bogart still had to work together on set, which proved to be challenging. Thanks for joining us for Season 2 of the Filmographers podcast, our deep dive on the legendary writer-director Billy Wilder.
We're grateful that more and more of you are choosing to support us on Patreon, and every month we show our appreciation by releasing ad-free versions of our main episodes on that platform, plus monthly episodes that are only available to our paid supporters. This month, our special episode is about Sidney Pollack's 1995 remake of Sabrina.
Instead of Audrey Hepburn, William Holden, and Humphrey Bogart, this remake has Julia Ormond, Greg Kinnear, and Harrison Ford. Is it any good? You'll have to listen to find out.
These exclusive episodes are available to paid supporters at any level. If you've been thinking about upgrading your membership, now is the time. Just visit patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast to show your support.
Once again, that's patreon.com/thefilmographerspodcast.
Thank you so much for your support. We do it for you, and we couldn't do it without you.
Keir, longtime listeners know that when you're not podcasting, you're a prolific author. Last year, you came out with 2 books, and you already have another one on the way.
That's right, Mike. On March 3rd, I Did Not Kill My Husband will go on sale. It's the 5th book I've written with my writing partner, Linda Jaffe Hull, under the pen name Linda Keir.
I Did Not Kill My Husband. That title sounds strangely familiar.
It should. It's an inversion of Richard Kimball's famous line in The Fugitive as he tries to find the one-armed man who killed his beloved wife. Our book is a thriller that pays homage to Andrew Davis's modern classic, only our wrongly accused protagonist is a social media influencer whose platform is all about what she calls ethical gold digging. And since she already admitted she married her husband for his money, no one believes she didn't kill him to cash out his insurance policy.
So no train crash, no one-armed man, no Tommy Lee Jones?
Nope. But I have no doubt film fans will enjoy the way we tip our hats to those famous story elements.
I can't wait to read it, unless they make it into a movie. Then I can just watch it.
From your mouth to Hollywood's ears, Mike. In the meantime, listeners, you can pre-order I Did Not Kill My Husband wherever books are sold. If you want a signed copy, order it from the Filmographer's favorite bookstore, Exile in Bookville. Visit exileinbookville.com. We make it a point here on the Filmographers not to sensationalize history. So before we delve into Sabrina's on-set drama, it's important to point out that the Wilders and the Bogarts, the other Bogart being Lauren Bacall, were friends. They shared similar liberal politics, they were all artists, and by all accounts, they liked each other. But dinner party conversation and the grind of making movies are 2 very different things. Dynamics shift, and people sometimes get tired of each other. Maybe creative disagreements were inevitable during the making of Sabrina.
Yeah, and to be fair, Bogart was in an unfortunate position. Wilder and Holden were basically best friends, and Wilder, like everyone else, like we've said, well, everyone except for Bogart, was smitten with Hepburn. How could you not be? This left Bogart as the odd man out. In her book, Nobody's Perfect, author Charlotte Chandler quotes Wilder as saying, Bogart was unpleasant because he believed that there were a clique of 3 against him. And he was both right and wrong. You might say Bill and Audrey and I had fun together, and you can't beat a bond of fun. And he was on the outside, end quote. Bogart was pushed even further out when Holden and Hepburn began having an affair on set. They were in love by all accounts, and the romance ended, though, according to Joseph McBride in his commentary track for the film, when Hepburn learned Holden had been snipped. She wanted children, and he already closed the door on that.
Wow, that would have been a power couple.
Yeah, imagine the kids.
Oh,
goodness, charming.
I'm sure AI could tell us what they look like, but we're not going to do that because we don't support AI. Anywho, use your imagination. The original AI. Bogart's troubles were tragically even deeper than that. By the time filming on Sabrina began, he knew he was dying of cancer. Wilder called him the most heroic person I've ever met, and has downplayed the troubles they had during the making of Sabrina. But according to Psychov, those troubles were significant. And according to just about everybody else, by the way. Bogart was drinking on set. Scotch, naturally, and the more he drank, the surlier he became. Wilder, Holden, and Hepburn were indeed a clique. The three of them drank together, along with writer Ernest Lehman, every day after shooting wrapped, but never invited Bogart. Possibly because he'd already been drinking on set and was no fun to be around, possibly because they just weren't friends in the same way. Whatever the reasons, Bogart was aware that he was on the outside and was often unpleasant on set. One day, when Hepburn and Holden received rewrites and Lehman ran out of copies before he got to Bogart, Bogart stormed off in a rage. On another day, he did receive new pages and proceeded to sneeringly ask Wilder if his 13-year-old daughter had written them.
There's just no winning. You give them the rewrites, you don't give them the rewrites.
Do you want these or not?
I want to imagine also the drinking clique of like Wilder, Hepburn, Holden, and Lehman. I'd imagine three of them are having fun.
Yeah.
One is drinking away anxiety, stress, and writing, and potentially crying. But we'll get to that.
We're going to get to the crying.
Can you guess which one?
Oh, we know. Anybody who's listening to this show should know. Is it the director, the actors, or the writer?
There's a pattern. Going back to Psychov, he calls Sabrina's shoot, quote, an extended nightmare, the first truly disastrous production Billy directed. Almost everyone blamed Bogart. Now, Bogart was angry about his lack of close-ups. He openly mocked Hepburn's accent, and then he turned to mocking Wilder. Bogart made things unpleasant, but Wilder made them chaotic.
We've noted this before, but Wilder had a definite habit of making shoots unnecessarily difficult. Up until Sabrina, he had more or less managed to escape unscathed. But as they say, if you play with matches, eventually you get burned. And on Sabrina, Wilder scorched his fingers pretty good.
Yeah, he got them all.
For starters, and I know this is going to come as a shock, but Wilder didn't get along with Samuel L. Taylor, the author of the play and Wilder's co-writer on the film.
How dare you? How dare you? We said we didn't sensationalize history, and here you are, spreading lies, filthy lies, Keir.
I know it's hard to swallow, Mike, because Wilder has been so respectful to his co-writers up until now. But, as he did with the stage play of Stalag 17, Wilder made changes to Sabrina. A lot of changes. Taylor didn't like the changes, and he didn't like Wilder, so he, like so many writers before him, walked off the project.
Yeah, and this was in August, and shooting was scheduled to begin in September. Wilder was screwed. So he called Ernest Lehman, an up-and-coming hotshot writer who just finished Executive Suite with Wilder faves Bill Holden and Barbara Stanwyck. And he was in the middle of writing a little movie called Sweet Smell of Success. Wilder begged, Lehman conceded, and off they went, writing as the movie was being filmed. Wilder would shoot all day, then he and Lehman would write all night. Lehman was stressed out. Wilder wasn't sleeping and his health was suffering. They lose days of shooting because they have nothing to shoot. Nothing was written. We'll do retakes. Wilder snapped one day, his back aching. He even asked Hepburn to act like she was sick so they could postpone shooting and give him a day to write. Another time, he asked cinematographer Charles Lang to invent a complicated lighting setup for a scene that hadn't been written just to buy himself more time.
He was using every trick in the book.
He was, yeah. Too bad. Luckily, that book was written. This one was not. And then, Keir, then the problems really began.
Oh, I thought they'd already... Okay. Bogart, like we said, was drinking. So was Holden. One day, Bogart called Holden a dumb prick, and Holden went after him. They had to be physically separated. After, according to Psychov, Bogart called Wilder a kraut bastard Nazi son of a bitch, which is really something to say to someone whose family has been murdered by Nazis. In return, Wilder looked at Bogart and said, I examine your face, Bogey, and underneath the sickening face of a shit is a real shit. And this to the most heroic person he'd ever met.
Well, you know how it goes. People say the craziest things in the heat of the moment. The problem with Bogart is that his moments seem to go on for a long time. It's one thing to feud on set. It's another thing entirely to air out your laundry to the press, which is exactly what Bogart did. He told one reporter that the movie was, quote, a crock of shit. And then he told another reporter that they were making a movie where no one even knew who got the girl in the end.
Which I understand was part of the way Wilder taunted Bogart too. Wilder probably knew Bogart's character Linus was going to get the girl in the end, but he was needling him by drawing it out because, you know, it would have really hurt Bogart's pride to be the highest paid star in the film, and then Holden gets the girl.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
Yeah. Layers upon layers of sadism here.
Train wreck.
And then you have poor, fresh-faced Ernest Lehman caught in the middle. Near the end of production, he literally had a nervous breakdown and collapsed in a heap, sobbing uncontrollably. Wilder had broken yet another writer. Luckily, Lehman survived and ended up becoming one of Hollywood's greatest screenwriters of all time.
Cary Grant was going to play Linus Larrabee, and he backed out of it, as he backed out of many pictures. So Billy and I visited Bogey up in Humby Hills, and Bogey sort of Billy kind of massaged Bogey and assured him that he would take care of him and it would all be great. And don't worry, you're in my hands, etc., etc. And Bogey never forgave him, felt that Billy constantly was betraying him and shooting nothing but close-ups of Audrey Hepburn. There was a bit of feud between the two of them during the whole picture. Some of it rubbed off on me.
How?
The way it rubbed off on me is that one day, while Billy was shooting, I went up to my office and rewrote a scene, and I didn't make enough copies. When I got back on the set, I handed one to Bill Holden and one to Billy Wilder and realized I didn't have a copy for Bogey.
Sorry to do it to a tired businessman.
He erupted in a fury and said, "Get this city college writer out of here, back to Monogram where he belongs." And Billy Wilder said, "There will be no further shooting on this set until Mr. Bogart apologizes to Mr. Lehman." I was mortified. I didn't know where to hide. Bogey came over to me, said, "Come on, kid, let's have a drink in my dressing room." And that was the end of it.
Production on Sabrina ended, at last, in December, 11 days over schedule. When it wrapped, Wilder looked up the sky, up to God, and screamed, "Fuck you!" Afterward, as tradition, there was a cast and crew party, but Bogart didn't attend. That's when Wilder found out that he had cancer. In his book of interviews with Cameron Crowe, Wilder recounted how he rushed to visit Bogart right away, and Bogart apologized for everything. Wilder said, "Forget it. I fight with a lot of people." That, according to Wilder, was the last memory he had of Bogart. He was very good. This is a quote from Wilder. "He was very good, better than he thought he was," is what Wilder told Crowe. He liked to play the hero, and in the end, he was.
It happens all the time. Creative feuds become personal feuds and vice versa. Creating art is personal, and as much as we may try to keep those lives separate, it's nearly impossible to do it. The fabric connecting the two is stitched too tightly.
Yeah, I agree. And ultimately, Bogart had a good excuse for behaving like shit. I mean, he was dying. Wilder, meanwhile, remained a difficult asshole to a ripe old age.
We love him dearly, but boy, oh boy, was he a handful. Shifting gears, we've spoken about how Sabrina is Wilder's most Hollywood movie because of its stars, but it's also his most Hollywood movie because, I would argue, it's his most conventionally romantic.
I agree completely. It's interesting to see how it fits into Wilder's filmography because it doesn't contain the darkness and cynicism that we've grown accustomed to. Yes, there is talk of suicide and even an attempt, but it's played kind of childishly and in the name of forlorn, romance. Don't get me wrong. Suicide is never childish, but the movie isn't playing it like an after-school special.
Yeah, not when the tailpipe is blowing smoke rings.
Yeah, and making like a goofy noise,
Yeah. And it's a weird scene for sure. But even if you do view Hepburn's half-hearted attempt seriously or put any stock into Bogart saying he was going to jump off the top of a building because he had a broken heart, it still doesn't have any of the heaviness of Wilder's previous efforts. There's no dark heart beating at the center of this one. Sabrina plays it straight. It's a romance with comedic flourishes, big stars, a razor-sharp script, and a satisfying love story. We haven't seen this kind of mainstream audience gratification since Wilder's directorial debut, The Major and the Minor.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. But still, in some subtle ways, one in particular, it does fit snugly in Wilder's overarching obsessions. Keir, I want to talk about masquerading in Sabrina. It's not a huge part of the movie, but it is certainly there.
It is, just like it's present in nearly every single Wilder film. In previous episodes, we've talked about how you have Ginger Rogers pretending to be a child in The Major and the Minor, Franchot Tone assuming the identity of a dead waiter in Five Graves to Cairo, so on, so forth. In Sabrina, it's Bogart's turn. As Linus, the all-business brother to Holden's all-fun David, Bogart, in order to ensure a merger goes through, acts like he's in love with Audrey Hepburn's Sabrina. He tries to dress up as a college kid, quite comically. I think, what does he say? Joe College with a touch of arthritis.
Yeah.
And even attempts to get Sabrina to fall in love with him, all in the name of making headway into the new plastics industry, not injury. It's an apt metaphor, with plastics being a way to fake the real thing. But the romance, of course, becomes real. Linus becomes the part he's playing, which is something he never dreamed would happen.
What's interesting to me is how different Bogart's masquerading is. In other Wilder movies, the deception is comedic or strategic. It's a character trying to get something. And while Linus falls into that character, he does want to complete the merger, his masquerade is more about concealment than it is about deception. He's concealing who he really is. His entire life, this existence as a living and breathing stock market ticker tape, is a performance. Underneath, he's like Sabrina, a doomed romantic wounded by love. It's the saddest masquerade in Wilder's movies, I'd say, certainly the loneliest. And I find it fascinating that Bogart's ultimate character arc is to learn how to end his own charade.
It seems to reflect Wilder's own growth at this time. At this point in his life, he's settled down and has been married to his wife Audrey for a few years. There's no hint that he was fooling around with other women, which was his normal routine in all his previous relationships. Of course, he was still treating writers like the prostitutes he used to pick up during his youth in Vienna. But overall, he seems to be maturing.
Yeah, I also want to point out just how great Bogart is in this role. You know, it's like we talked about all of the drama that was happening behind the scenes. And then you mentioned that, like, the Joe College with arthritis, like, he really nails that line. Like, it's just, he's still so good, like, so professionally. Like, obviously, yes, he caused a lot of people a lot of grief, clearly, by all accounts. And he, you know, we said he had his reasons, very clear and not fitting reasons. Oh God, that's wrong to say. You know what I mean? Like
understandable reasons.
Reasons. Thank you, Keir. Dynamite drop in. He behaved badly, but man, you just forget all that. Like, you watch him on the screen, and if you didn't know it, you wouldn't know it. Like, his layers, the depth, the sadness, the longing, his charm. I would say he's pretty charming in this movie. A lot of people would argue. I've seen some pretty negative reactions to his performance. I thought he was pretty great, but I don't know, especially in this day and age where movie stars are a dying breed. You look at Bogey, and even when he's potentially phoning it in or not very happy, you say to yourself as you see him on the screen, that is just a movie star up there.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's an interesting thing in that I have come around on his performance quite a bit. The first time I saw that movie, I couldn't get past the fact that he seemed miscast. He is certainly, you know, poor Audrey Hepburn spends most of her career playing against much older men. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I guess that's something that hasn't really gone away, although it probably seems like even more common back then. And I just remember thinking he just seemed kind of like a out of place sourpuss or something. And each time I've watched the movie, I've come around more on his performance because I think you're right. I think there is some, maybe it's just a little bit by nature of him being an odd choice for the part, but I think it's also what he's going through in his personal life.
Yeah.
I think almost his anger at being miscast in this film or being a second choice in this film. Maybe some of that seeps through and informs his performance. Maybe his knowledge of his illness is informing his performance, but it does make it a very melancholy performance in a way that is much more resonant than I first thought. And particularly like Holden is capable of doing a lot more than he is called upon to do in this film. And Holden is just such a shallow one-note playboy that it really does make you care more about this kind of, one of the writers, good Lord, sometimes I just forget where I get this information, but one of the people I read talks about how he's mechanistic. You called him a human ticker tape machine, but right. He's surrounded by machines. He's got machines in his car, machines in his office. He opens and closes his door with a button, a little bit like Matt Lauer later on. But there's this sense that he is disconnected from his own life. He's more machine than man.
Yeah.
And even like the opening and closing the door remotely thing is a very cold gesture. He doesn't walk anybody to the door and open the door. When Sabrina leaves, he presses the button so she can exit. And so I do think that adds up to a pretty compelling portrait of an alienated man who is desperately in need of somebody to break through that and allow him to feel like a human again.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. And melancholy is the perfect word. And I will say this while we're here for a moment. There's a movie that Hepburn made. I don't know if it's her final performance. It might be, but it's a Bogdanovich movie, which everyone knows. I love Bogdanovich, and they all laughed. It's potentially Bogdanovich's best movie. I'm not sure, that or Paper Moon, but it has Audrey Hepburn, and she's in a role where she is appropriately cast against Ben Gazzara, who's so good in this movie. But they have a romance between them, and she's married, and there's this kind of almost self-awareness of her bad romances, miscast romances, and finally she's against this intelligent man, her age, her experience, and they have this just warm connection. And it's, if you know that history, it's so satisfying. Even if you don't, it's a lovely, lovely, lovely romance and a great movie. But like knowing all of Hepburn being cast against like just these decrepit old men, geezers compared to her, when she finally gets to like get a romance against an equal,
an age-appropriate romance,
yes. But nonetheless, Bogart in this, I think we both agree, underappreciated.
Agreed. And we've got another wildly age-inappropriate romance with Audrey Hepburn coming up soon in our season on Billy Wilder.
How do you say in French, my sister has a yellow pencil?
Ma sœur a un crayon jaune.
How do you say, my brother has a lovely girl?
Mon frère a une gentille petite amie.
And how do you say, I wish I were my brother?
Sabrina opened in September of 1954, and when it did, Paramount was able to boast that it featured 4 Oscar winners: Audrey Hepburn for Roman Holiday, William Holden for Stalag 17, Humphrey Bogart for The African Queen, and Billy Wilder for The Lost Weekend. Wilder was now, like the stars on the movie's marquee, an A-lister. And the timing was perfect, too, because this was his final movie with Paramount. After 18 years and 17 films, his contract was up. Although, technically, his most recent contract with them was for 3 pictures, and that contract was fulfilled by Sabrina. Wilder was now a free agent.
Which makes this the perfect time to have a hit. And Sabrina was undoubtedly a hit. It was one of the top-grossing movies of the year, though... Keir, do you know what the number 1 movie from 1954 was in terms of box office receipts?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, good. I mean, you know what? I've got it written down. It was White Christmas. It somehow always comes back to goddamn Bing Crosby. He's still at it. Though, I will say, congrats to Michael Curtiz, a man who made nearly every type of movie imaginable. I mean, from swashbuckling Errol Flynn epics to Technicolor musicals. And by the way, White Christmas was the very first movie to be released in VistaVision, to crazy B movies like Dr. X, to Casa Frickin' Blanca. He did it all. And with Bogart. Anyway, Sabrina was a box office hit, but not as big as Bing Crosby crooning about Christmas.
Yeah, we got to subtitle this show The Curse of Bing Crosby. He keeps coming back like a bad penny.
Listen to our Hogan or our Stalag 17 Hogan hero story for more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That son of a bitch.
Critics loved Sabrina too. Variety praised the script's dialogue, saying, quote, "The splendid trooping delivers the lines in style. Leavening the chuckles are tugs at the heart," end quote. Interesting phrasing, but they liked it. The New York Times called it the most delightful comedy romance in years. Everyone loved it, except Pauline Kael, who said, girlfriend.
That doesn't sound like Pauline Kael.
That's a direct quote.
Okay.
Yeah, before they edited the review. Anyway, she also said that Hepburn overdid her charm, whatever that means, and Bogart was trapped in his role. Which, I mean, that was my first experience viewing that. I kind of felt the same way.
Yeah, it's another, I don't know. It's another look at that role that like maybe wasn't the best fit, but we can look at it to see he did pretty magical things with it. So whatever, But another person who didn't like Sabrina or any of Wilder's movies for that matter, at least not at first, was famous film critic Andrew Sarris. Sarris will surely come up more often as we begin looking at Wilder's later films, but suffice to say, he wasn't a fan. In his 1968 landmark book, The American Cinema, Sarris famously called Wilder out and made it a point to disqualify him as an auteur. And auteurism, thanks to the burgeoning French New Wave and to Sarris himself, was all the rage at this time. Sarris was one of the leading proponents of the auteur theory. He said, this being Sarris, that Wilder lacked sophisticated visual style. He was, quote, less than meets the eye, and that his films were simply clever comedies and or melodramas. He especially disliked Sabrina, which he dismissed as being shallow. Now, Keir, again, we'll discuss Sarris's assessment more of Wilder in future episodes, but for now, I want to look at this idea that Sabrina and Wilder lack depth. How do you feel about that?
Frankly, Mike, it's insane.
Okay. Done.
Moving on. No, as we've learned this season, Wilder's films have layers upon layers. And even though he sometimes puts his message out front, as he did with Sunset Boulevard or Ace in the Hole, he still managed to hide razor blades in movies like, well, speaking of Bing goddamn Crosby, even The Emperor Waltz has a hidden critique of eugenics and Nazism. Many of Wilder's depths, well, I think there are some things in his movies even he wasn't aware of, but that's true of all great artists, right? Most great artworks don't arrive from somebody sitting down to say, I'm going to make a painting about war. It emerges as they create the work of art. As far as Sabrina goes, yes, sure, it is one of Wilder's shallower films. But as you already pointed out, as we discussed, there's poignancy to Bogart's Linus. There is a gentle critique of capitalism. And Hepburn's Sabrina is so much more poignant than she would have been if, say, Frank Capra had made the movie, which is a thought that makes me shudder. Sarris would later reconsider his opinion of Wilder, but come on.
Yeah, I think Sarris also misses what Wilder was after in this movie. He's clearly trying to make a Lubitsch film. Like, that's what he's doing. It's a shadow that Wilder spent a lot of his life chasing, and with Sabrina, for the first time, you really see him attempting to recreate the work of his mentor. Now, that doesn't mean Sabrina should be given a free pass or that any movie should be allowed a pass based on its intent, but I think Sarris is confusing old-fashioned with shallow. Sure, Sabrina isn't upsetting the status quo. I mean, bear in mind, Sabrina was released in 1954, the same year as La Strada and Seven Samurai, movies that were planting the seeds for the changes to come in cinema. But just because you're not revolutionizing cinema doesn't mean you're shallow. I mean, you can make the case that Wilder had already revolutionized movies with Double Indemnity, concretizing the film noir genre and pushing the Hays Code further than anyone had before. Sabrina is old-fashioned. It's a comedy of manners, a movie just like Lubitsch would have made, just like Wilder and Lubitsch did make together in Ninotchka. Wilder even has a minor hat gag as Lubitsch touch, making the tribute all the more clear. As such, Sabrina works wonderfully. Just look at its remake to see how the same premise works when placed in lesser hands. Call the 1954 version shallow if you'd like, but you'd have to take all of Lubitsch down with you, and I don't know if Saris is prepared to do that.
And we will be taking a look at the remake of Sabrina in our Patreon exclusive episodes. So Patreon supporters, stay tuned for that one. Spoiler alert, not as good as the original.
Not great, Bob.
But we'll get into it. And at any rate, clearly, Saris was way off the mark because Sabrina received 6 Academy Award nominations, and the Academy never gets it wrong.
Never. Impeccable nominations, impeccable winners, and every year's show is exactly the right runtime.
I think we just doomed ourselves to an eternity in hell.
Be forced to watch Crash on repeat.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
Getting back to Sabrina, it was indeed nominated for 6 Oscars. Billy Wilder for Best Director, Audrey Hepburn for Best Actress, Wilder, Lehman, and Taylor for Best Adapted Screenplay. And it was also nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design, all of those in the black and white categories at a time when they used to have separate categories for black and white and color. It only took home 1 statue, however. Edith Head won for Best Costume Design. In total, over the course of her legendary career, Head was nominated for 35 Oscars and won an astonishing 8 times. Even if this win was a little ironic, since Hepburn's stunning dresses were designed by Hubert de Givenchy, who received no screen credit. Being cheap, Paramount had Hepburn buy the dresses as her own personal wardrobe.
Yeah, I had heard that. That's pretty wild. But even so, Edith Head.
Still the goat.
Still the goat.
This is a hobo suit, darling. You can't be seen in this. I won't allow it. 15 years ago, maybe, but now...
What do you mean? You designed it.
I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now.
Yes, that is Edna from The Incredibles. Her character was inspired by Edith Head.
And voiced by writer-director Brad Bird, which continues to blow my mind.
Weird. Weird. I don't like it.
And then Brad does the voice for E because he's the only one who can.
If you repress, you depress, darling. To impress, you must express.
Now, Mike, we know Sabrina was another commercial and critical hit for Wilder. But how do you feel about the movie?
I love this movie. Like, I truly do. I almost feel like I shouldn't because it's not as sharp and biting as his other movies. It doesn't have, the dark edge of Double Indemnity or God, The Lost Weekend or the brilliance, just the casual brilliance of Sunset Boulevard. But it's charming and it's romantic. And I feel like while it may not have pushed boundaries, it's maybe as influential, if not more influential than those movies. Like, romantic comedies have kind of died. I mean, they're kind of coming back with the Netflix slop of romantic comedies. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't
shudder.
Yeah, I don't really. Jesus Christ, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days looks like goddamn Citizen Kane compared to those things, and that movie's bad. But if you can trace a line from a Sabrina in 54 to the 90s, early aughts romantic comedies. They really are all following the love triangle. The one person's kind of cold, one person's, really warm, and a woman caught between. There's so many of those movies. And the now this kind of faded over time, but the razor sharp scripts, the really great dialogue, the really fun supporting characters, all of this stuff. And look, Sabrina didn't invent that. I mean, Lubitsch kind of invented that, Lubitsch was more the comedy of manners, and then Wilder's kind of not revolutionizing, but taking it to the next stage in a way. But it's a really influential movie. If you ask Cameron Crowe, who was one of these romantic comedy guys, one of the best at a certain point, and kind of was considered the person to be carrying the torch from Wilder with Singles and Jerry Maguire. And I would venture to guess that Sabrina had a big influence on him and his life and his writing because he's doing the same thing in a lot of ways. So I think it's a really, really just influential and great movie. I think it's charming. I think the stars are stars. Like I said, even when Humphrey Bogart's phoning it in, he's still awesome. He's still great in this movie.
That's what makes a star a star.
Yes.
Contrary to what she said in Sunset Boulevard.
Right. But it's just, you don't want to give it a pass. Say like, yeah, he phoned in. It's not Humphrey Bogart's best, but I still like it because it's him. But like, he's still doing such good work. And Holden, even though he's one note, is still very charming. And Hepburn is fantastic. And like, there's so much to love in here. It still looks absolutely wonderful. The script is so great. We didn't even talk about like the sexual innuendos of like the souffles that rise and don't, which is so
there's a fair amount of wild or dirty stuff in here. It's done in a very Lubitchian way.
Exactly. So I really, really enjoy Sabrina. I'm with you. I was kind of like, this movie's fine going into it when I first saw it. And I've seen it a few times since, and my appreciation for it. And maybe it's not nostalgia necessary for this movie because I wasn't alive when it came out, but nostalgia for this type of movie. And because this is kind of like almost the alpha or one of the biggest movies of this type of movie, I just have such a fondness for it because I miss this movie. I miss them making movies like this, and seeing it just gives me a warm feeling. And I love watching the stars, and I love the script, and I just really enjoy Sabrina. And while it's maybe, quote unquote lesser Wilder, I still think it's pretty damn good.
Quick digression. Do you think we can't have comedies of manners anymore because people have no manners?
Well, yeah, there's no standards in society anymore. What's the standard, like?
I mean, we still have classes of people, but it's more economic than social, I would say. And so I think the attempt to resurrect these classic romantic comedies is doomed to fail because, we live in a world where rich people dress poor. There's no kind of class stratification in the way that Golden Age Hollywood was playing with. We absolutely have class. We have economic strata. We have the 1%. We've got the 3%. We've got, but that has, I think that those things are not personified in a way that makes them a good subject for a light romantic comedy.
Oh yeah, the romance from the other side of the tracks doesn't exist. I mean, and when it does, even now, it's so hideous and so stupid, and you have to like jump through these hoops to be like, she's the princess of a made-up country, and like he's like, it's like utter bullshit.
I think you could argue that maybe the logical place that kind of movie goes in today's world is a movie like Honora.
Oh yeah, I mean, people have called Honora a very Billy Wilder-ish movie.
Interesting. I had not heard that. But that is like
you heard it now.
That's like it feels fully modern, and it also feels fully in the tradition of this kind of movie.
Like I said, I've heard that before, and I thought of it because of the characters and the colorful cast and the dialogue and a lot of that things that are going on in Honora that are really good. But I never really thought about it in that context, and it only kind of cements that idea that it's very much a Wilder movie.
Yeah.
And, Wilder loved prostitutes.
So that seals it.
Done.
Well, I like the movie too. As I kind of revealed with my response to Bogart, I have sort of similar feelings about the whole movie in that the first time I saw it, I was excited to see it because I knew it was a classic. I wasn't really a big Billy Wilder fan yet. I certainly knew who he was. I had seen a handful of his films. I knew it was one of his better known films. And so, I'm going to go watch this as a fan of film and classic films. And it left me a little cold. I think partly I couldn't get past the age difference. I did think Bogart seemed a little bit in the wrong movie. And I also thought Holden seemed like too goofy. And any rate, I didn't connect with it. And that's that. Flash forward, however many years, saw it again, watched it a couple of times preparing for this podcast. And each time I like it more. And I feel that way about a lot of Billy Wilder films that I maybe wasn't a huge fan of, which makes me wonder if I have like some Billy Wilder Stockholm syndrome. I do think there's something to the fact that when you study something closely, you appreciate the craft in it more, and you maybe find things that you overlooked. And of course, you know, to be fair, you know, listeners, we know we're fully invested in Wilder. So, you know, I recognize that there's a certain amount of like, now I'm like the hometown fan or something like that. And I do think I can be somewhat objective with him, but I'm probably losing some of my objectivity because I'm looking for something interesting in everything he does.
Would you, if you followed around Kirk Douglas, maybe he'd call you fan. Come on, fan.
Oh man, if I could have just heard Kirk Douglas call me fan one time.
If only.
Yeah.
If only.
If only Cameo existed.
I know. AI Cameo.
No. But yeah, so it has really grown on me, and it is a lightweight film. And, you know, I'm going to kind of repeat a version of this when we get to the next movie, 7 Year Itch, which is, you know, I think has less going for it than Sabrina in some ways. But, you know, I did find things that I liked about that as well. One of the things that I do really love about Sabrina, I mean, the humor and the writing and the quality of the script and the performances definitely works in this film. But I also think that Charles Lang Jr. deserves a hell of a lot of credit for his photography in this film because it is gorgeous. The 4K restoration that I think is a Kino Lorber.
It is, yes.
Is unbelievable. I just was gazing at this movie with my mouth hanging open. I mean, it looks so good. The shadow dappled shots on the inside tennis court, and that's two very important scenes that take place in this indoor tennis court, are just beautiful.
Yeah.
And Audrey Hepburn is, of course, beautiful with or without great photography, but he makes her look even more radiant if that's possible. And there's just a lot of really well-composed shots that are not, you know, it's a Wilder film, so they're not flashy. They're simple, but just nice, simple camera movement, tracking an actor into a shot where they move from shadow into light, and then, but in a very artful way. There's a lot of kind of indoor outdoor scenes in this, from the patio looking into the mansion, the trees looking onto the patio, and it creates this kind of magical fairy tale like feel that is so lovely and so effective. And Lang, you know, I don't know a lot of cinematographers' names, you know, or know too much about their careers, but you know, I did a little bit more reading about Lang, and he is tied for the lead in all-time Oscar nominations for cinematography with 18 nominations. He only won one, which is crazy. He was also nominated, though, for some other Wilder-related films, Arise My Love,
okay,
A Foreign Affair, which he shot for Wilder, and of course, he will go on to shoot Some Like It Hot. His full list of credits is just astonishing. He's clearly just one of the best in the business. And, you know, so he's truly an unsung hero in making this movie work. It's a movie that's got to be lovely and fairy tale like, and he delivers the look in spades.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is. I mean, the tradition is rooted in Welsh fairy tale, I believe, is where the play kind of gets inspiration from. The first line is "Once upon a time there was a girl,"
right?
You know, so I mean, like, and it has class, it has charm, and it has beauty, and that's something we don't really get in cinema that much anymore. And you hit the nail on the head. It really looks lush and gorgeous and just fairy tale-esque, and I think it's perfect. And side note, the house, the mansion that they shot the movie in was also used for Adam West's Batman.
Yes.
So also fairy tale and classic.
And was owned by one of the studio execs. I can't remember which one.
Yes. With a B. I can't remember.
Two of the locations they used were connected, like, studio people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say is just that, again, we see why Wilder loved black and white so much. He was able to do so much with it. The films are so expressive and just so gorgeous. And it's such a fascinating era of film history because color's coming in. People are very excited by color, but there's still some diehards like Wilder who had dabbled in color one time, didn't like it, went back to black and white, and continued to make these amazing looking films. And then in his next film, 7 Year Itch, we'll be talking about the transition to color, but two very different looking films with totally different aesthetic visually, but also in class to crass.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic of like the dignity of black and white in that tradition, and then the garishness of color that's kind of matching, not to spoil anything, but 7-Year Itch, which is pretty garish, you know, the look, the tone, all of it. I'm not a huge fan of it, and I think that's part of the reason why. Keir, if someone's coming to Chicago, what's one place they have to visit?
Mike, no one should leave town without stopping by Exile in Bookville, the city's most beautiful and carefully curated bookstore. It's located on the second floor of the historic Fine Arts Building at 410 South Michigan Avenue.
Hey, didn't you write a book about the Fine Arts Building?
Why, yes, I did. It's called Chicago's Fine Arts Building, Music, Magic, and Murder, and you can find it at Exile.
Exile is the best. Wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling books, all lovingly selected by owners Javier and Kristen Ramirez. I guarantee you'll find something to read.
Their strong suit may be general and literary fiction, but I particularly love the middle room. That's where I find graphic novels as well as books about art and music, cooking and cocktails, and our personal favorite, books about movies.
Javier and Kristen were kind enough to let the Filmographers recommend our favorites, so stop by and see what we selected.
I wrote a shelf talker for one of my all-time favorites, Kyle Buchanan's Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, the wild and true story of Mad Max Fury Road.
They also stocked one of my faves, Sam Wasson's The Big Goodbye, Chinatown, and the Last Years of Hollywood.
Exile also has nonfiction, short stories, small press titles, and the very best in modern horror.
Listeners, if you're coming to Chicago, don't leave without visiting Exile in Bookville in the Fine Arts Building at 410 South Michigan Avenue. But you don't have to come to Chicago. You can find all they have to offer at exileinbookville.com.
Because there's more to life than movies. There are also books.
About movies.
It's that time again. Time for the Filmographers 5. Since Billy Wilder won't show any love for the writers he works with, we're taking it upon ourselves to do it. After all, it's not every day you get to discuss a movie written by the great Ernest Lehman. To celebrate him, we're listing our top 5 favorite Lehman movies. Mike, what do we have at number 5?
Our 5th favorite Ernest Lehman movie is The Sound of Music. Didn't know he wrote that one, did you? Thought it was all Rodgers and Hammerstein? Well, it's not. There's a script there too, and Lehman wrote it. Is The Sound of Music my favorite movie? Hell no. But it's an important movie. People love it. It's iconic, and you really can't have a list of Lehman movies without its inclusion.
Our 4th favorite Ernest Lehman movie is, believe it or not, another musical. 1961's West Side Story, which is superior to The Sound of Music and simply one of the greatest musicals of all time. I'm not sure what the process is of adapting a Broadway musical, but it can't be easy. If it were, they'd all be hits. Whatever magic Lehman possessed, he also adapted The King and I. He had it working in full force for West Side Story, a stunning classic movie that won 10 of the 11 Academy Awards it was nominated for. The one it lost? Best Adapted Screenplay. Life and the Oscars just ain't fair.
No, they're not. Our 3rd favorite Ernest Lehman movie is Sweet Smell of Success, a nasty, downright filthy tale of fame and those who cling to it. You need to take a shower after watching this thing, which is why it's one of my favorite movies. The dialogue has layers upon layers. It's unflinching, it's honest, and it's relentlessly dark. Tony Curtis and Burt Lancaster provide legendary performances, some of the best of their careers, and the gritty, grimy New York cinematography has few equals. It's just a one-of-a-kind movie, deeply cynical, and one that, in its depiction of powermongering and vindictiveness, remains powerful to this day.
Our 2nd favorite Ernest Lehman movie is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Mike Nichols' masterful adaptation of Edward Albee's play. It's a very faithful adaptation of Edward Albee's play, but that doesn't diminish how skillful of an adaptation it is. Having the good sense to leave perfection alone, a skill not all writers possess. A lesser writer would have wanted to put his own stamp on it, or worse, turned George and Martha into Nick and Nora Charles. Terrific performances, remarkable blocking, and great source material make this one of the best movies ever made.
And our favorite Ernest Lehman movie is North by Northwest, simply one of the greatest screenplays ever written. It's fun, it's funny, it's the goofiest use of a MacGuffin probably ever, and it's loaded end to end with charm, sexiness, plot twists, and the perfect amount of suspense. Lehman crafts some of his sharpest dialogue, clearly relishing the opportunity to play with Cary Grant. I adore this movie, and I adore its commentary track provided by Lehman. He's one of the all-time greats, and North by Northwest is him at his very best.
Listen to me. I'm an advertising man, not a red herring. I've got a job, a secretary, a mother, 2 ex-wives, and several bartenders dependent upon me. And I don't intend to disappoint them all by getting myself slightly killed.
And that's it for this episode of the Filmographers podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on our season-long exploration of Billy Wilder.
Have a comment or a suggestion? Want to share your thoughts on Sabrina or make a special request? We want to hear from you. Email us at thefilmographerspodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, as always, to our fantastic producer, Kevin Lau, who makes our podcast sound and look as good as it does. Our theme music was composed and played by Gompson, who has a new album out. It's called Dwell On. It's great, and we encourage you to buy it on Bandcamp, or if you must, listen to it on Spotify. Our graphic design is by Cosmo Graff.
Join us next time when Billy Wilder's career takes a dramatic, extraordinary, and tumultuous turn as he crosses paths with the one and only Marilyn Monroe.